Well, good morning, everybody. I have a confession to make to all of you. The sermon that I'm going to be sharing with you right now is not actually the sermon that I shared with the Mead Church this morning. The sermon I shared there had to deal with serving two masters and our inability to do so. That we have to choose one, or we have to choose the other. And the reason that I'm not going to share that same sermon here today is that this morning I woke up and I had this other message in my head. And I saw some things, and I delivered this other message in me, the one I had planned on doing. But I realized that as I was preaching that and I got done, I realized that I was serving myself. I worked hard on that message and I wanted to deliver it. And what I should have been doing was listening to God speaking to me, which I really feel God is doing that with this message today. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I feel this is what God wants me to talk to you about a little bit today. So here we go. Have you ever heard of a young lady named Greta Thunberg? Some of you have, right? Yeah, well, Greta is a young lady from Sweden. And Greta has Asperger's syndrome. And the unique thing about Greta is what she did. See, there's this whole thing going around our planet right now, and on our country and other countries, and it's talking about our climate and how things are heating up and how climate's kind of going crazy. And she wanted her government to understand that there is a problem and that her government needs to step up and maybe do something, or at least acknowledge there's a climate issue, so then they can work with other governments to actually accomplish something. So what was going on is nobody was doing anything, seemingly, right? So Greta, by herself, goes in front of the government parliament building and pickets parliament on her own. And I'm sure people driving by were like, wow, she's crazy. What can one person possibly do to make any difference? What can one person do to change anything that's going on? What can one person do to get this government to acknowledge there's a climate thing going on and to maybe start looking into it? Well, you know, she believed that she could do something about it. And then when people saw this, other people began to believe that they could do something about it. And now you have hundreds of people out in front of their government parliament buildings with signs saying, hey, let's do something about the climate issue. Hundreds of them. A lot of them are young people because they got inspired by watching Greta. She was willing to stand up when nobody else was. Can one person make a difference in the world? Can one person change the world? Yes. 100% absolutely. That's exactly what Greta is doing right now. Today. She's making a difference. All too often in our lives, I think, we run into that same type of situation. What can I possibly do to change this situation? What can I possibly do to address what's going on over here? What can I do? I'm just one person. What difference can I make? There's another gentleman who lived a long time ago, you might have heard of. His name is Martin Luther. Right? He was within the Catholic Church systems. And he saw some issues with the way church was being done. The way the Catholic Church was approaching some different issues. And I'm definitely not here to bash Catholic Church. I love the Catholic Church. But he had some issues with it. But nothing was being done. So what he did one day is he wrote all these things down in what's called the 95 Thesis, and he nailed it to a church door in Wittenberg, Germany. And people saw it. And people saw it. And people printed copies of this thing off. And before you knew, a lot of people got behind just one man making one statement. The whole Protestant Reformation happened after that, and that's where the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church became two different entities. And that's why we are here today in a Protestant church, with slightly different views, but a lot of the same views. Because one person did something. They believed that they could make change happen. And they indeed changed the world. So as we gather here, you might be wondering, well, what can I do? Sure, you're talking up there about stuff, but what can I still do? Right? Sometimes we look at our youth and go, well, they're young, they don't know anything. How can they change the world? We have a lot of evidence that kids and young people can and do change the world every single day, because they're not afraid to stand up and raise their voice, get others to follow. There's another young lady named Malala who was shot, and she became a world activist for peace. She's very, very, very famous. Yeah, it took her getting shot, but it was for her response to that in a really crazy mixed up world that got her noticed. She goes, I don't want to talk about this. I want to talk about peace and love, even though what happened to me was violent and horrific. One young person made a difference. And they're still making a difference today. She's spoken at the UN. She has gotten publicity. People are understanding this, right? How can we bring peace and love into the world? Well, it starts with one person, does it not? It starts with one person. When Jesus came down to this earth, he was one person. Yes, Jesus was God. Jesus came down and he started to make a difference right away. And he started going after people called the disciples, right? And probably each one of those disciples, I would imagine, maybe thought, well, what can I do to help this guy out? I don't have the necessary skills. I'm just one person. Yet together, these 12 plus Jesus changed the world forever. Changed the world. Because they believed in something. One person at a time. I was watching the Ellen DeGeneres show. Not watching it, but I saw some clips on YouTube. And she had on the show 3 young men. And one of these young men had been bullied for a long time. He had come to school with not the best clothes on, and he was being made fun of. And one of these young men was laughing as well, and then he realized that, wow, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be laughing. And so he went out, and he decided that he was going to do something on his own. He talked to his friend about it, and his friend said, I want to help you. And they bought this other young man clothes, and they went to church. They went to school. We're in church. They went to school, and they gave this young man the clothes that they had gotten. And somebody filmed it, and it went viral. You can go look at it right now. These boys crossed over cultural boundaries. The school culture of being a bully. The one boy thought, enough is enough. This isn't right. He made a difference. And when you go on the Ellen show, guess what happens? You get publicity. And maybe others are saying, you know what? Bullying is not okay. One person decided to do one thing to change the world. Maybe they didn't set out to do that. That's what's happening. So when we say, what can I do to change the world? You can do a lot. Each one of you has a unique gift. And if you start changing the world around you, then others might start changing as well. You know, if you keep handing out your puffed corn on Sundays and other events, what does that do? That brings a smile to people's faces, right? Maybe people are having a bad day and they get the puffed corn and they start eating it. You cannot eat puffed corn and not be happy, right? You are changing the world one person at a time, whether you realize it or not. When you go out and do your own activities outside, and people see this, and they see that you're a really caring, compassionate person because you're going out to visit people, guess what you're doing? You are changing the world one person at a time. So I don't ever want to hear, what can I do? What can one person do to change the world? There's a story, and you may have heard this before. A man was walking along the beach, and he looks down the beach and he sees this other man. He keeps stooping over and throwing things back into the ocean. And he's like, well, what is this guy doing? As he gets closer, he notices that this man is picking up starfish that have been washed up on the beach. And he's picking them up and he's looking at them and he's throwing them back into the ocean. And there's hundreds and hundreds of starfish on the beach. And the man grew closer to the guy throwing the starfish back, and he just began to wonder, what is this guy doing? He got close enough to the man, and he says, hey, what is it that you're doing? He says, well, I'm taking the starfish and I'm throwing it back into the ocean because they're stranded up here on the beach and they can't get back on their own. And that man who was originally watching said, wow, are you serious? And at that point, this other gentleman picked up a starfish and he looked at it. He was getting ready to throw it back into the ocean. And the first man said, what difference do you think you can possibly make by standing here on the beach and throwing starfish into the ocean? And that second man just kind of looked at that starfish, and he smiled, and he gently threw him back into the water, and he said, it made a difference to that one. See, sometimes when we think about changing the world, that's a big thing to even think about, isn't it? How can we change the world? Well, we don't go out setting to change the world. We set out changing the people near us. Helping them understand that bullying is not okay. Helping them understand that peace and love is the only option that we have. To help them understand that taking advantage of other people is not okay in any situation. You can make a difference. And dare I say that you do make a difference. And maybe it's time that we just start to believe that. As we sit here today, as you watch this, you do make a difference. Every time you help somebody, you are making a difference. Every time you bring up an issue and try to help others, you are making a difference. When you try to help this planet, you are making a difference. When you pick up trash outside, you are making a difference. You don't have to be a young person to have this happen. Because some of you with the gray hair, guess what? You have a lot of life experience. You're wise beyond words. And maybe you think, I've done my stuff. What difference can I make? And I just shake my head and say, man, you can make so much of a difference. Because you know things. You know how to love. You know how to talk to people. If the young people without experience can change this world, why can't all of us? And what I want us to all understand this day is this is the message that I think God was telling me as we gather here today. Simply being that you can make a difference and that you do make a difference right now. So when you leave this building today, I want you to go out knowing full well that you have the ability to change the world that we live in. Because you're doing it already, one person at a time. Go out and make a difference. Bring that joy to people. Try to go out and right the wrongs that are happening in our own backyard. Go out and be the person that says bullying is not okay and violence is not okay. Stand up for your God, stand up for your Christ, and stand up for the people in your lives. Go out and make make a difference. Because I believe that's what God created us all to do. And I think for right now, that's a pretty good place to start. Would you pray with me, please? Gracious God of wonder, God of the message, Lord, that you might help us understand that we can and we do make a difference. Help us, Lord God, on this journey. In your name we pray.